She bought an abandoned fire station for $500. Everyone laughed at her and called her crazy. But when she went inside and opened what was hidden there, her life changed forever. Subscribe to our channel and comment which city you're watching from. This helps us create even better content for you. Sarah Martinez stood in front of the mirror in the locker room of Fire Station 12, pulling on her heavy protective gear. Around her, the voices of her male colleagues rumbled, but none addressed her. She'd been working here for 5 months and still felt invisible. The morning had started like every other. Sarah arrived early, prepared her equipment meticulously, and waited for acknowledgement that never came. She'd scored highest in her academy class, could carry a grown man down 3 flights of stairs, and had reflexes that amazed even seasoned instructors. Part 5. Sarah's blood turned to ice as she realized what was happening. This wasn't a meeting, it was an execution. "Sarah!" Chief Reynolds called out, his voice echoing. It mattered here. "Hey, rookie!" shouted Mike, a veteran with 20 years of experience. "Today you're staying at the station. Leave the real work to real firefighters." The laughter of her colleagues pierced Sarah's heart like a knife. She had dreamed of becoming a firefighter since childhood, after firefighters rescued her from a burning building when she was 7. The image of those brave men and women emerging from smoke and flames had shaped her entire life. But now that the dream had come true, reality proved cruel. "I went through the same training as you," Sarah said quietly. "Training is one thing, real work is completely different," grumbled Joe, another veteran. "This job requires strength, not female tricks." Sarah clenched her teeth. Every day she proved her competence, but the men continued to treat her like dead weight. They didn't trust her during calls, didn't include her in the team, pretended not to hear her suggestions. Last week, when she'd suggested a safer approach during a warehouse fire, they'd ignored her completely. The building had partially collapsed an hour later, exactly where she'd predicted. Captain Reynolds, the station commander, watched these interactions with cold indifference. Sometimes Sarah caught him staring at her with something that looked like contempt. She tried to speak with him privately about the hostile work environment, but he'd dismissed her concerns. "Firefighting is a brotherhood, Martinez," he'd said. "Either you earn your place or you don't belong here." The irony wasn't lost on her. She was trying to earn her place, but they wouldn't give her the chance. That evening, when the shift ended, Sarah sat in her small apartment, browsing real estate listings. The walls of her tiny space felt like they were closing in. She needed something of her own, a place where she could prove to everyone and herself that she was worth something. Her savings account showed exactly $500. 5 months of frugal living, skipping meals, walking instead of driving. Every penny saved for some undefined future opportunity. That's when her eyes stopped on a strange advertisement. Abandoned fire station for sale. Price, $500. Needs extensive repair. Cash only. Serious inquiries only. Sarah's heart raced. $500 was all she had, but her own fire station. It sounded like madness, or like a chance. She called the number immediately. "Yeah," answered a gruff voice. "I'm calling about the fire station for sale." A long pause. "You got 500 cash." "Yes." "When can you look at it?" "Tomorrow morning." "Fine, meet me there at 9, 1247 Elm Street, and bring cash if you're serious. Sarnum." The next day, Sarah drove across town to a neighborhood she'd never seen before. The buildings grew older and shabbier as she got closer to Elm Street. When she found 1247, her heart sank. The building looked terrible. Peeling paint, broken windows, a yard overgrown with weeds and debris. Graffiti covered the lower walls. The old sign reading, "Fire Station 12, was barely visible under layers of rust and vandalism. But something stirred in Sarah's chest as she looked at it. The bones of the building were good. The architecture was classic 1920s fire station design, with high ceilings and large bay doors. With work, real work, it could be magnificent again. The seller, an elderly man named Frank, appeared from around the corner. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg. "You sure about this, miss? This place has been empty for 15 years. Lots of folks looked. Nobody wanted to take it on." "What happened to it?" Sarah asked, walking around the main bay. Frank shifted uncomfortably. Fire back in 2008. Damaged the upstairs pretty bad. But the real problem is that back garage. Been locked since before I inherited this place from my uncle. Key got lost somewhere. Sarah examined the main bay doors. They were stuck but not broken. The concrete floor was cracked but solid. Upstairs, she could see through broken windows into what had once been living quarters for firefighters. Your uncle owned this? Yeah, strange old bird. Bought it from the city in 1995 when they built the new station. Always said he was going to restore it, but he just never did. Then he died 5 years ago and left it to me. I've been trying to get rid of it ever since. Why so cheap? Frank laughed bitterly. Cheap? Miss, I've had this listed for 2 years. Started at 50,000, then 25, then 10. You're the first person who's even come to look at it in 8 months. The city wants it demolished. Says it's an eyesore. I figured 500 is better than paying demolition costs. You bought what? Mike exclaimed when Sarah told him about her purchase the next morning. The entire fire station erupted in laughter. The men pointed at her, shook their heads, exchanged mocking glances. Even the dispatcher, Mrs. Henderson, looked up from her desk with raised eyebrows. An abandoned fire station for $500, Joe repeated, wiping tears of laughter. And what are you going to do there? Open a museum of failures. Sarah sat calmly at the table drinking coffee. She was used to their mockery, but this time something was different. She had a plan, a goal, something personal. I'm going to restore it, she said. Make it a training center for young firefighters. With what money? Mike asked contemptuously. Do you have anything besides those $500? Sarah knew money was a problem, but she also knew she couldn't give up now. Too much was at stake. Captain Reynolds appeared in the doorway, his expression stern. Martinez, a word. Sarah followed him to his office, feeling the eyes of her colleagues on her back. Reynolds closed the door and gestured for her to sit. Is this some kind of joke? He asked. Buying property while you're still on probation. No, sir. It's an investment in my future. Your future isn't guaranteed here, Martinez. You're still proving yourself. And stunts like this don't help your case. Sarah felt her temper rising. Stunts. I bought property with my own money. That's hardly a stunt. Everything you do reflects on this department. If you embarrass us with some half-baked renovation project that fails, it makes us all look bad. Or, Sarah said carefully, it could make us look good. Show the community that firefighters care about preserving their heritage. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, studying her. You really think you can make something of that wreck? I have to try. After work, she drove to her new property. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the broken windows. Sarah walked through the main bay, imagining fire trucks parked here, recruits learning their trade. She'd brought a notebook and started making lists. What could be salvaged? What needed replacement? What the priorities should be. The electrical system would need complete rewiring. The plumbing was probably shot. The roof had obvious leaks, but the foundation was solid. The walls were thick brick that would last another century. The bay doors, while stuck, were made of quality steel that just needed cleaning and maintenance. She climbed the damaged stairs to the second floor, stepping carefully around debris. The fire damage was extensive. Charred walls, collapsed ceiling sections. Debris everywhere. But the structure seemed sound. The living quarters had been spacious once. She could see where bunks had been arranged, where firefighters had eaten meals and waited for calls. There was even an old pole that led down to the main bay. As she explored, she noticed something odd. The back of the building had what looked like a separate garage, accessible only from inside. Frank had mentioned it was locked. Sarah made her way through the debris to examine the heavy wooden door. It looked much older than the rest of the building, like it had been built in a different era. The wood was thick oak, barely damaged despite the building's neglect. The lock was massive, old-fashioned, the kind that required a skeleton key. She tried pushing, pulling, even threw her shoulder against it. The door didn't budge. Whatever was behind it had been secured to stay that way. Standing there in the fading afternoon light, Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Why would part of a fire station be locked away from the rest? What were they trying to keep hidden? That night, she researched the building's history online. The fire station was built in 1925 during Prohibition. It served the community until 1995, when the new station opened across town. But there was something else. Several newspaper articles from the 1920s mentioned unusual activity around the station. Reports of trucks coming and going at odd hours. Complaints from neighbors about noise at night. One article from 1929 caught her attention. Residents near Fire Station 12 report increased traffic during late evening hours. Station captain denies any unusual activity, citing equipment maintenance and training exercises. Another from 1933. Fire department budget shows unusual expenditures for Station 12. Commissioner promises investigation. But then the article stopped. Whatever investigation had been promised apparently never materialized. Sarah's curiosity burned hotter than any fire she'd ever fought. The next day, she returned with tools borrowed from the station: crowbars, a sledgehammer, bolt cutters. If she owned the place, she had every right to see what was behind that door. She started with the hinges, trying to remove the pins that held the door in place. But they were seized solid, probably hadn't moved in decades. The lock mechanism was equally stubborn. After 2 hours of frustration, Sarah stepped back and really looked at the door. Something was wrong with the proportions. The frame was too deep, the door too thick. This wasn't just a storage closet. She walked around to the outside of the building, counting windows and doors, trying to figure out the layout. The locked room should correspond to a section of the back wall, but from outside, that area looked normal. No windows, but that wasn't unusual for a storage area. But when she measured with her eyes, something didn't match. The room behind the locked door was bigger than it should be. Much bigger. Sarah's heart started pounding. This wasn't just a storage room. It was a hidden garage, large enough for vehicles, large enough for secrets. The next morning, Sarah returned with a different approach. Instead of attacking the door directly, she studied the wall around it. Old buildings often had weak points, places where time and weather had done what crowbars couldn't. She found what she was looking for near the floor, a section of the wall where moisture had rotted the wood frame. With careful work, she was able to remove several loose boards. The opening was just big enough to squeeze through. The garage was pitch black. Sarah's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing something that made her gasp. A fire truck, but not like any she'd ever seen. It was massive, built like a tank, with armor plating bolted to its sides. The red paint had faded to rust brown, but she could still make out the number 12 painted on the door. This was from the original Station 12. But why was it armored? And why was it hidden? Sarah walked around the vehicle, her flashlight revealing bullet holes in the metal plating. This truck had seen action, real action. The armor wasn't decorative. It was functional, designed to stop bullets and survive attacks. The front of the truck had been modified with a massive bumper and reinforced grille. The windows were thick, probably bulletproof glass. Even the tires were unusual. Solid rubber, not pneumatic. They couldn't be shot out. Sarah climbed up to examine the water tank. It was enormous, much larger than modern trucks carried. The capacity marking read 2,000 gallons, twice what current trucks held. But when she tapped it, it rang hollow. Empty. No, not empty. Different. The sound was wrong for water. Too metallic, too resonant. Sarah found the tank access panel and worked it open with her multi-tool. Her flashlight revealed something impossible. Money. Stacks and stacks of cash, wrapped in oilcloth and plastic bags. Some bills looked ancient, others more recent. And underneath the money, a leather-bound ledger book. Sarah's hands shook as she lifted the book. The pages were yellowed but well-preserved. Names, dates, amounts, payments to city officials, police captains, judges. The dates started in 1925 and continued right up to last month. Her blood ran cold as she recognized some names. Current city councilman, the fire chief, even the mayor. This wasn't just historical corruption. This was ongoing. But the entries weren't random. They followed a pattern. Payments made before major construction contracts were awarded. Money changing hands before building inspections. Bribes paid to make evidence disappear from police lockups. Vincent Vinny Torino's name appeared on every page from 1925 to 1955. Sarah had heard that name before, a bootlegger who'd controlled half the city during Prohibition. But according to the ledger, his operation hadn't ended with the repeal of alcohol prohibition. It had evolved. The recent entries were in different handwriting. Someone had taken over Torino's network, kept it running, modernized it for the 21st century. The amounts were staggering, millions of dollars in bribes over the decades. Sarah photographed page after page with her phone, her heart racing as she documented the evidence. This was bigger than she'd ever imagined. A criminal conspiracy that had operated for nearly a century, reaching into every level of city government. But who had been maintaining this? Frank said the garage had been locked for years. Someone had been using this place, keeping these records, making these payments. She heard a car door slam outside. Sarah quickly closed the ledger, grabbed a bundle of cash as evidence, and prepared to climb down from the truck. But as she moved toward the opening she'd created, she heard voices. Multiple voices. Men talking in low, urgent tones. Through a crack in the garage wall, she could see a black sedan parked outside her building. Two men in expensive suits stood beside it, one talking on a cell phone. "Well, she's been here. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel. Boss wants this contained. No loose ends. What about the woman? Same as the others. Make it look like an accident." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Others. What others? She crept closer to the crack in the wall, trying to get a better look. The men were examining the building, looking for signs of entry. One of them had a gun visible under his jacket. The phone conversation continued. "Been watching her since she bought the place. Figured she'd give up after a few weeks, but she's persistent. Should have listened to the warnings. Some people never learn." Sarah realized she was trapped. The opening she'd made was on the same side of the building as the men. If she tried to leave, they'd see her. But worse than being trapped, they'd been watching her. They knew she'd bought the property. They'd probably been the ones making those threatening phone calls, following her around town. How long did she have before they found a way inside? Sarah looked around the garage desperately. There had to be another exit. Fire stations always had multiple exits for safety. In the far corner, barely visible in the shadows, she spotted another door. This one was smaller, newer than the main garage door. An emergency exit, maybe installed during renovations. She made her way across the garage, stepping carefully to avoid making noise. The door was locked, but it was a modern lock, not the ancient mechanism that secured the main entrance. Sarah worked on it with her multi-tool, her hands trembling as she heard the men outside getting closer to the building. The lock clicked open just as she heard them trying the front door of the fire station. Sarah slipped through the emergency exit and found herself in an alley behind the building. Her car was parked in front, but reaching it meant going past the men in suits. Instead, she ran deeper into the alley, pulling out her phone to call for help. But who could she call? If the corruption reached as high as the ledger suggested, even the police might be compromised. She called the one person she thought she could trust, Maria Santos, an investigative reporter for the local newspaper. They'd met during a community fire safety event. "Sarah, what's wrong? You sound terrified." "I need help. I found something at the fire station. Evidence of corruption going back decades. And now there are men with guns looking for me." "Where are you?" "In an alley behind Elm Street. They're at the building now." "Stay hidden. I'm calling federal contacts. Don't trust local police." "Maria, this is bigger than we thought. The fire chief is involved. Maybe half the city government." "I believe you. Just stay safe until help arrives." Sarah crouched in the alley for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. She could hear the men searching the fire station, their voices echoing through the empty building. When Maria's federal contacts finally arrived, it wasn't with sirens and flashing lights. Two unmarked cars pulled up quietly, and 4 people in plain clothes got out. Sarah recognized the look. Federal agents, probably FBI. One of them, a woman in her 40s with short gray hair, approached the alley where Sarah was hiding. "Sarah Martinez. I'm Agent Patricia Wells, FBI. Maria Santos sent us." Sarah stood up on shaky legs. "There are men inside the building. They have guns. They were talking about making my death look like an accident." Agent Wells spoke into a radio, and within minutes the building was surrounded. The 2 men in suits were arrested without incident. They'd been so focused on searching for Sarah that they hadn't noticed the federal agents moving into position. "We're going to need to see this evidence you found," Wells said. Sarah led them back into the garage through the emergency exit she'd discovered. When the agents saw the armored fire truck, even they looked impressed. "Jesus," one of them muttered. "It's like something out of a war movie." Agent Wells examined the ledger with a small flashlight, flipping through pages methodically. "This is incredible. We've been investigating city corruption for 2 years, but we only suspected the surface level. This goes back decades." "The recent entries," Sarah said, "they're in different handwriting than the older ones. Someone took over the operation." "Any idea who?" Sarah hesitated. She had suspicions, but accusations needed proof. "Deputy Chief Morrison's name appears in recent entries. So does Chief Reynolds. But I don't know who's actually running things." Agent Wells nodded. "We'll need you to come in for a formal statement, and you'll probably need protective custody until we can round up everyone involved." "Protective custody? For how long?" "Hard to say. This network you've uncovered, it's going to take months to unravel completely, and judging by what those men were saying, they're willing to kill to keep it secret." Sarah thought about her colleagues at the fire station, Mike and Joe, who'd started treating her better recently, Mrs. Henderson at dispatch, even some of the veterans who'd been warming up to her. "What about my job? I can't just disappear." "We'll work something out. Maybe administrative leave, medical leave, something that doesn't raise suspicions." But Sarah knew better. Once word got out about the investigation, everyone would know she was the source. Her career at the fire department was over, one way or another. The next morning, Sarah sat in a conference room at the FBI field office, going through the ledger page by page with Agent Wells and two other investigators. They'd been at it for hours, connecting names to faces, payments to contracts, bribes to political decisions. The scope was staggering. The corruption network had influenced everything from building permits to police investigations. Fire inspections were routinely falsified for the right price. Evidence disappeared from police custody. Judges received payments before major trials. "Vincent Torino was just the beginning," Agent Wells explained. "He built the framework during Prohibition, but it evolved after his death, became more sophisticated, more integrated into city government." "Who took over after Torino died?" "We're not sure yet. The handwriting changes several times over the decades. Different people have run it at different times." Sarah studied a page from 2018. "This payment here, $50,000 to Building Inspector J. Martinez. That can't be a coincidence." Agent Wells looked up sharply. "Martinez is your name." "My uncle Juan was a building inspector until he died 3 years ago. I never knew him well, but—" The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Sarah's own family might have been part of the corruption network. "We'll need to investigate that connection," Wells said gently. "But it doesn't change anything about your situation. You're still in danger, and we still need your cooperation." That afternoon, Sarah's phone buzzed with messages from her colleagues at the fire station. Captain Reynolds wanted to see her immediately. Mike was asking where she was. Even Joe had sent a text asking if she was okay. But it was the message from Deputy Chief Morrison that made her blood run cold. "Need to talk. Important. Meet me at the old station tonight. Come alone." She showed the message to Agent Wells, who immediately began planning a sting operation. "This could be our chance to catch him in the act," Wells said. "But it's dangerous. He might be planning to eliminate you." "What choice do I have? If I don't show up, he'll know something's wrong. The whole investigation could be compromised." "We'll have agents positioned around the building. You'll wear a wire. The moment things go bad, we move in." That evening, Sarah drove to the fire station with her heart pounding. She wore a small microphone taped to her chest and had a panic button in her pocket. Federal agents were positioned in unmarked cars throughout the neighborhood. She arrived first and waited in the main bay, surrounded by shadows and memories. This place had started as her desperate attempt to find belonging and had become the center of a criminal investigation that could destroy half the city government. At exactly 9 p.m., Deputy Chief Morrison arrived. He wasn't alone. Chief Reynolds stepped out of the passenger seat, followed by two men Sarah didn't recognize. One of them was carrying a gasoline can. "Sarah," Morrison called out as they approached. "Glad you could make it. We need to settle this situation once and for all." Maria had a plan. They would document everything, make copies, and coordinate with federal investigators. But first, they needed more evidence. The truck itself is evidence, Maria explained. That armor plating, those bullet holes, and there might be more hidden in that garage. Sarah agreed to go back, but this time she wouldn't go alone. Maria would wait outside as backup, ready to call for help if anything went wrong. The next evening, they drove to the fire station separately. Sarah went inside while Maria parked across the street with a clear view of the building. Sarah had brought better tools this time. She wanted to examine every inch of that garage. The armored fire truck sat silent in the darkness, keeping its secrets. Sarah climbed back up to the water tank and carefully removed more bundles of cash. Underneath, she found something else. Photographs. Black and white images from the 1920s showing the truck being loaded with barrels and crates. Men in suits overseeing the operation. And in the background, uniformed police officers looking the other way. But the most shocking photo was in color, clearly recent. It showed Deputy Chief Morrison shaking hands with a man Sarah didn't recognize, exchanging an envelope. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 months ago. Someone was still using this place, still documenting the corruption. Sarah heard the garage door creak behind her. She spun around, flashlight in hand, and saw a figure silhouetted in the doorway. Not Maria, someone else. "You should have listened to the warnings," said Deputy Chief Morrison, stepping into the light. He held a gun pointed directly at her. Sarah's radio crackled. She'd forgotten she still wore it from her shift. "All units, we have a suspicious vehicle reported at the old Station 12. Unit 19 responding." Morrison's face went pale. Unit 19 was Mike and Joe. They'd be here in minutes. "You called this in?" Morrison demanded. "I don't have to call anything in," Sarah said, thinking fast. "Maria Santos is outside right now, photographing your car. She's got federal contacts. If anything happens to me, this whole thing goes public tomorrow." Morrison hesitated. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah's radio crackled again. "Unit 19 on scene. Black sedan in the parking area. Running plates now." Morrison lowered his gun slightly. He was trapped and he knew it. "This doesn't end here," he warned. "You have no idea how deep this goes." "Then tell me," Sarah said. "Tell me everything, and maybe we can work something out." But Morrison was already backing toward the door. "You're in over your head, rookie." Way over your head. He disappeared into the night just as flashlight beams appeared at the garage entrance. "Sarah, what the hell are you doing here?" Mike's voice echoed through the garage. Sarah quickly climbed down from the truck, her mind racing. She couldn't tell them about Morrison, not yet. Not when she didn't know who else might be involved. "Checking on my investment," she said, trying to sound casual. "Heard a noise. Thought someone might be vandalizing the place." Joe's flashlight swept across the armored truck. "Holy shit! What is this thing?" "Looks like something from a war zone," Mike added, examining the bullet holes. "This has been here all along." Sarah nodded. "Found it yesterday. I think it's from the Prohibition era. Probably worth something to a museum." She watched their faces carefully, looking for any sign they knew more than they were letting on. But they seemed genuinely surprised. "You know," Mike said slowly, "I heard stories from my grandfather. He used to work at the old Station 12 back in the day. Said there were rumors about weird stuff going on." "What kind of rumors?" Sarah asked. "Cops and firefighters getting rich while everyone else struggled during the Depression. Trucks going out at night that never responded to fires. But Grandpa always said it was just talk." Arrow. Joe was walking around the truck, his flashlight revealing more details. "Look at this craftsmanship. This armor plating was professionally done. Military grade." Sarah's radio crackled. "Unit 19, what's your status?" Mike keyed his radio. "All clear, property owner on scene, false alarm." But as they prepared to leave, Joe noticed something else. "Sarah, look at this." He was pointing to the floor near the truck's rear wheels, fresh tire tracks in the dust. Someone had moved this truck recently. Very recently. The 3 firefighters exchanged glances. This wasn't just a historical curiosity anymore. "We need to call this in," Joe said. "Call what in?" Sarah asked. "We don't know what this is yet." But she knew, and she knew they were all in danger now. Mike's phone buzzed. Text message. He frowned as he read it. What is it? Sarah asked. Dispatch is calling me in. Emergency meeting with the chief. Right now. He looked up. You two as well. They want to see all of us. Sarah's blood ran cold. Morrison worked fast. He was already making moves to contain the situation. I'll follow you guys, she said. Just let me lock up here. Mike and Joe left, but Sarah didn't follow them to the station. Instead, she called Maria. They know we know, she said. Morrison was here. He threatened me, then ran when the cavalry arrived. Now they're calling everyone in for an emergency meeting. Don't go, Maria said immediately. It's a trap. They're going to try to discredit you, maybe even arrest you for theft or trespassing. Then what do? We go public. Right now. Tonight. I've got everything ready to publish. But as Sarah hung up and started toward her car, she saw headlights approaching, multiple vehicles moving fast. She ducked back into the garage and watched through the crack in the door as 3 police cars and a fire department SUV surrounded the building. Chief Reynolds stepped out of the SUV, along with Morrison and 2 police officers she didn't recognize. Sarah was trapped. Sarah crouched behind the armored fire truck, listening to voices outside the garage. They were positioning people around the building. Professional, coordinated. She's got to be in there somewhere. Morrison's voice carried through the thin walls. Her car's still here. Sarah pulled out her phone and texted Maria. Surrounded. Going live with evidence now. Send federal backup. The garage door began to slide open. Sarah made a desperate decision. She climbed up into the cab of the old fire truck and hit the ignition. To her amazement, the engine turned over. Someone had been maintaining this beast. The garage erupted in noise as the massive armored truck roared to life. Sarah threw it in reverse and punched the accelerator. The truck smashed through the garage door like it was made of cardboard. Wood and metal scattered as the armored vehicle burst into the night. Shouts and gunfire erupted behind her. Bullets pinged off the armor plating as Sarah spun the wheel and aimed for the street. But she wasn't trying to escape. She was heading straight for the main fire station, where the emergency meeting was taking place, where her colleagues were being fed lies about her. The radio crackled with confused voices as she barreled through the city streets in a 1920s armored fire truck. All units, we have a stolen fire apparatus heading north on Main Street. Dispatch, that truck's not in our fleet. What the hell is going on out there? Sarah keyed her radio. This is firefighter Martinez. I'm not stolen. I'm bringing evidence of corruption that goes back a century to Station 12. Maria Santos at the newspaper has all the documentation. Federal investigators are already involved. She pulled into the parking lot of Station 12 just as fire trucks were rolling out to respond to the stolen vehicle call. Firefighters stopped and stared as Sarah climbed down from the armored truck. Mike and Joe were among them, along with dozens of others from stations across the city. Sarah, what in God's name? Mike started. This truck belonged to the old Station 12, Sarah called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was used during Prohibition to transport illegal alcohol and money for bribes. The same corruption network is still operating today, reaching all the way up to the fire chief and deputy chief. Chief Reynolds pushed through the crowd, his face red with rage. Firefighter Martinez, you are under arrest for theft of city property. It's not city property, Sarah interrupted. I own the building where it was hidden, and I have documentation proving that you, Chief Reynolds, have been taking bribes for the past 8 years. She held up copies of the ledger pages, waving them so everyone could see. These records show payments to city officials, police officers, and fire department leadership. Building inspections passed in exchange for money. Evidence destroyed. People killed to keep this secret. Morrison appeared at the edge of the crowd, his hand moving toward his weapon, but Joe stepped between them. Stand down, Deputy Chief, Joe said firmly. Let her talk. Mike was examining the armored truck, running his hands over the bullet holes. Jesus Christ, Sarah. This is real. It's real, she confirmed, and there are federal investigators already reviewing the evidence. This ends tonight. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not city police or fire department vehicles. Federal agents arriving exactly as Maria had promised. As the FBI cars pulled up, Chief Reynolds made one last desperate move. She's lying. She planted that evidence. She's been stealing from the department. But the firefighters weren't buying it anymore. They'd seen the truck. They'd heard Sarah's explanation, and they could see the fear in their chief's eyes. Mike stepped forward and placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder. For what it's worth, rookie, I believe you. And I'm sorry we didn't listen before. Other firefighters nodded agreement. The brotherhood that had excluded her was finally welcoming her in. Not because she was one of them, but because she'd proven herself worthy of their respect. Federal agents moved through the crowd, beginning arrests. Chief Reynolds and Deputy Chief Morrison were taken into custody, along with several police officers whose names appeared in the ledger. As the chaos settled, Sarah found herself standing next to the armored fire truck that had changed everything. Maria Santos approached with a camera crew, ready to tell the full story. "How does it feel to be a hero?" Maria asked. Sarah looked around at her colleagues, at the federal agents securing evidence, at the building that had started as her desperate attempt to find belonging and had become the key to exposing a century of corruption. "I just wanted to prove I belonged here," Sarah said. "Turns out, sometimes proving yourself means standing up to the people who were supposed to have your back." 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same spot, but everything had changed. The old Station 12 had been restored as a training facility and museum, just as she'd originally planned. The armored fire truck sat in a place of honor, its bullet holes and armor plating telling the story of corruption and courage. Sarah wore the insignia of her promotion to lieutenant. The new fire chief had personally recommended her, citing her integrity and bravery. Her male colleagues no longer saw her as an outsider, but as the firefighter who had saved their department's reputation. But the real reward was simpler than all that. She finally belonged. Not because she'd been accepted by others, but because she'd proven to herself that she was willing to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. Sometimes the most dangerous fires aren't the ones burning buildings. They're the ones burning truth. And sometimes it takes just one person with the courage to sound the alarm to save everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if this story inspired you. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Sarah's incredible journey from outcast to hero. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories like this one.